Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Happy to introduce you to my friend Shelby Rhea Miller. She's the founder of Sycamore Counseling Services and a licensed professional clinical counselor. Sycamore Counseling Services serves clients in Paducah and Louisville, Tech. Totally read that wrong. Okay. See,
You can
we
put me in Texas. It's okay.
I just interviewed somebody from Texas today. It's Friday. Okay. We're going to start over. Okay.
Sure.
I'm going to clap. Just don't be like alarmed. Shelby Rhea Miller is the founder of Sycamore Counseling Services and a licensed professional counselor. Sycamore Counseling Services serves clients in Paducah and Louisville, Kentucky, and the practice is about to celebrate its first year. Shelby Rhea is passionate about building healthy marriages and helping individuals cultivate resiliency in the face of life's challenges. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share today.
Yes. Well, you and I were having dinner recently, and during our time at dinner, we just kind of started talking about how the Lord has used our practices to change us. And it was just so engaging. I was like, you're coming on the podcast, and we're chatting about that.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. That was a great time to get to connect face to face and just talk about how our practices change us too.
That's right. That's right. So before we kind of go more into that, I want to give people more, just more about you. Kind of, can you share a little bit of your background, how you got into counseling, and kind of what your life is like right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I pretty early on in college knew I wanted to be a therapist, and that had just come from my own experiences in the profession. I think a lot of us can relate to that. I had had really profound healing experiences in counseling rooms, and I knew that I just wanted to be a part of that. And so took some detours and some long paths to get there throughout my 20s. And took a detour in some academic leadership kinds of things, but then ended up getting my LPCC a couple of years ago and have served as a clinical counselor in several different group practices. And then now, like you said, Whitney, my own practice is about to turn 1 year old.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm kind of going back and thinking about when did you join Wise Practice and how did you hear about it?
I joined Wise Practice right at the start of 2025. I actually found you through podcasting.
No.
So through this podcast is how I got connected with the community and you especially. I was just researching, kind of binging podcasts, getting all of the trainings that I could to feel more equipped to start my practice, and started listening through your episodes back then, and then joined the community. I think pretty quickly after, and then took a few months before we started coaching together too.
Mm, love that. And I go back and I just think about how the Holy Spirit directs and guides us, right, into the things that we do. And even going back and thinking about that call that we had, because truly we were jumping on a call for me to tell you something totally different. And then
Yeah.
and then we started chatting and I was like, I think we should work together. I feel the direction here. And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And we were like, all right. So, and the Lord has been, blessing that relationship and the work that you're doing. Um, so I don't know, just thinking about how God directs us. So going back, you've had a lot of different settings that you've been a part of, and then you were a part of a group practice, and then you decided to go out on your own. So can you talk a little bit about making that decision and how that was not only a business decision, but really a spiritual decision for you?
Yeah, primarily it was a spiritual decision for me. I had had the dream to launch my own practice at a certain phase in my career development, and I did not think it was going to be anytime soon. And
Hmm.
so, through some twists and turns in my life, my husband and I we moved to another part of the state of Kentucky, where we're at now, out here in Western Kentucky, and I was starting to get familiar with the mental health landscape out here, and there just wasn't a place that was going to let me integrate faith the way that I really feel passionate about. And so it was one of these moments where, in a rather cavalier fashion, I was like, well, I guess I'll start something. I guess now is the time. And so seeing that need, the passion that I have for it, but then also recognizing, hey, there's people here who want the intersection of, Holy Spirit led clinical counseling. And so
Hmm.
started that journey.
That's right. That's right. And so when you think about that and we think about spiritual formation,
Mhm.
What do you feel like even in that step, what do you feel like God was kind of producing in you through that?
Yeah, that was like the first big step in this year of what I call faith building. Like I am building a practice, but really it's incredibly faith building for me. And there are a lot of stories, since that initial, hey, I'm gonna do this, that have been what felt like really big jumps in my faith, and really big risks that, could have had consequences if the Lord was not in it. And so it has been probably the most faith building thing I've ever done in my whole life in the last year.
Mm, mm. So that sounds challenging, doing something that's
Yeah.
developing your faith. Do you look back and kind of wish that you hadn't done it?
No, absolutely not. No, it's way, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but it's way too much fun. There is so much joy in stepping into the faith building aspect and stepping into risk and really kind of surrendering to that process of, this is a phrase I say all the time. I am building a counseling practice, sure, but a far more truthful statement is that this practice is building me. And
Mhm.
when I sit in that posture, when I like lean back and recognize, hey, I'm not actually the one building this, then it's a whole lot of fun.
Mm. Most people would probably say, "What? Like it's fun to have risk, joy and risk? Like what do you mean by that?"
I don't know. There's just a freedom to it. You sent out an email to the Wise Practice community this week, Whitney, about like the joy of waking up early and how you wrestled through that process, but waking up with like this desire to work, this desire to get to the things of the practice. And I related to that. I was like, yeah, there is just this energy. It's almost like a harmonizing that happens where it's like, this is like the smack dab center of what I feel like I was created to do.
Mm.
And so there is just an energy and joy that comes from that.
Mhm. Yeah, I relate to that. Um,
Yeah.
so, okay, so you took this risk, you found
Yep.
so much joy in starting your practice, and so how has it been? You haven't quite started your group practice. You're like on the cusp of hiring your first person, but like before we kind of dive into that, what's it been like just growing your caseload? How's your faith been through that? And like how has your practice transformed you through that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. It would not be the full story if I said like, every day is just fantastic, right? That's not truthful. There are plenty of days where I'll drive home and I'll be thinking, okay, the calls are not coming in this week. The forecast of my caseload 2 weeks from now is not where I want it to be. And when I get too far ahead of myself, right, and I start forecasting out several months ahead, then I can feel the anxiety come on and I can feel kind of that like sinking feeling about just like being kind of insecure and untethered to not knowing what the future looks like. Cause there is just that inherent part of building a caseload and building a practice where none of it's promised for tomorrow. And so when I get too far ahead of myself, I can kind of feel that anxiety start to well up in me. And so then, there's this kind of practice that I do about just like leaning back. And I physically lean back. I just did it in my chair a few minutes ago to remind myself, like, hey, I can surrender into this. And if if the worst happens and for some reason Sycamore has to close its doors in 6 months, which I really don't think will happen, but let's say that were to come true, and to recognize that and just kind of surrender to that is actually really freeing.
Mhm. So the idea of surrender, even you talking about the leaning back reminds me of the biblical, like when people would eat together or Jesus leaned back and it's with his friends. I can't remember specific passages, but that idea of reclining is that idea of resting, that idea of trusting. And so like you are learning in a new way that reliance on God, and that reliance leads to you feeling that freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I like that you use the word trust. There has been a lot of opportunities to grow in trust, and not just like in my relationship with the Lord, but really in my relationship with myself, if that makes sense. Really trusting what I have to offer,
Mm,
really trusting that I have good things to share into the community and having the kind of the boldness and the courage to step out and to do that, to risk rejection, to risk people not being interested, and to kind of put myself out there has been really trust building.
hmm. Yeah, I was thinking just yesterday about practice owners and looking back at my life, and like risk is usually when I went to the next level. Now,
Mm.
I've made some risks that didn't work. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But it's usually when I look back and I go, okay, that was game changer for me. It was usually when somebody really disappointed me and I
Mm.
had to step up my game, gain my confidence, or when I chose to rely on other people, so I made an investment. So that could be an emotional investment. But I feel like when I see practice owners make an investment, which usually involves a risk, that's when I see something move to the next level.
Mhm.
Yeah. I know that's something we've kind of talked about kind of offline. Was this idea of you noticing that like sometimes you're actually the one getting in the way of
Mhm.
maybe even what you feel like God's wanting you to do? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was telling you a story about an encounter I had a couple of years ago. I'll tell it now so that everybody's on the same page. So, I was in a really hard season of my life. It was right after a divorce. My whole life was really untethered and insecure, and the people and the things that had shaped who I was for so long, I just wasn't in connection with anymore. And so, it was a really kind of untethered season. And I was sitting across from this woman who is a very good friend of mine, and she's powerful in her own right. And it was my first birthday after that divorce. And she looked at me and she said, really sharply, with a lot of direct, kind of concise energy, she said, Shelby Ray, your future is limitless. The only thing that stands in your way is you. And I mean, Whitney, those words cut me, not in a aggressive way, not in a violent way, but in a way where when someone tells you something that's so truthful and you remember them forever. And so her words, Tammy's words to me that day were exactly that. It was, there is so much goodness, there is so much capacity, there's so much beauty ahead of you. But how you respond in this season will shape how the rest of your life goes. And so remember that. And it's been so healing, so transformative for me. I have it on a post it note right in front of me on my desk here at the office. My future is limitless. I am the thing that stands in my way. And
Hmm.
so, especially with something as risky as starting a group practice or a solo practice, turning group practice, that is on my mind all the time.
Mm,
Recognizing, like, I don't know if you relate to this, but how quickly I am to say no, how quickly I am to tear apart an idea before I run with the risk of it. I'm recognizing that, like, my automatic responses are kind of that mindset of scarcity. And I'm like, wait, no, this isn't how I want to live. And so I'm kind of training myself out of that, shifting my mindset into a place of abundance and recognizing, yeah, my future can be limitless as long as I
mhm,
let it be.
Yeah, I was thinking about that idea of abundance while you were talking. Like, that's
Yeah,
obviously a biblical idea that God has got so much more for us than we can even imagine or understand. It's just a
yeah,
matter of us being open to it. Um,
mhm.
and we're never going to get there if we keep getting ourselves in the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I can relate to that on like, for me, it's trusting people, like trusting people to do things well or to do it at my level or to care about me or care about the practice, and so I've had some of the biggest times have been when I took risks on hiring certain people or, allowing certain people into certain aspects of my business or my life. And yeah, sometimes that doesn't go well and people aren't nice.
Yeah,
But a lot of times it does work. And those are the very things that help me go to the next level and just really help me grow personally, you know.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
There
So
is a lot of growth on the other side of risk.
definitely, definitely. And so when we look at where you're at now, how do you feel like, and maybe you're still figuring this out, but like, how is God changing and working in you now and using your practice to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's definitely a learning process in that. I'm not sure that's a place I ever want to arrive. But I think right now, what I would say that the Lord is doing primarily in me is somewhat connected to what you were saying about trusting others. But to recognize that I'm not the only one building Sycamore. That sure, I am the founder and I'm the solo clinician right now. So I'm doing all the client hours, I'm doing a whole lot of the administrative tasks, but there's also a lot of people around me who the Lord has placed there intentionally who are helping me build this practice, who are inspiring me, are encouraging me, are challenging me, and to loosen up a little bit and to take this input and direction from other people. And it's funny, the vision that I had last August for what Sycamore would look like this August, I mean, completely different.
Yep.
Maybe even the vision that I had in July of 2025 is completely different than the vision I have in August of 2025. And so there's this growing edge. I'm a planner. I told you once on a call, Whitney, that like I dream in spreadsheets, and that's so true. Like I take calculated risks. I like knowing all of the possible worst case scenarios so that I can plan for those. And I think to some degree that helps me be successful, but it also keeps me in a small zone because I
Mm.
won't take a risk if I can't plan for and mitigate all of the potential fallout. And so there have been plenty of opportunities in the last 6 months, especially about primarily from you about pushing the rate at which I thought I'd grow my practice to a group and recognizing that this was not the plan I had, but that there could be a lot of value in that. And so
Mhm.
stepping forward and trusting other people who are more seasoned, more experienced, and also just care about Sycamore has been, I think, primarily one of the primary ways the Lord has grown me to recognize, like, hey, this isn't just mine.
Mm-mm. You bring up such an important idea here that really is no perfect answer, but the dynamic as a Christian business owner of
Mhm.
understanding the logic and doing the numbers and calculating, but
Mhm.
also saying, okay, God, here's what I've calculated. Here's the wise choice. But what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes when we follow God, it's like an upside down world. It's
Mhm.
something different than we ever expected. But then we look back and we're like, oh, well, that was definitely the best decision to make,
Yeah.
if you feel that way sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm trying to think of a tangible example of that, but I think even investing in coaching from Wise Practice was that for me.
Mhm.
When I had first looked at it, I was like, oh, I want to do that. And then, of course, I get out my spreadsheets and I run the numbers and I'm like, when is this the best choice for my practice? And so I had a date in mind. It was June of 2025. I was like, that's a really comfortable, risk-free time to do that. And so I'd scheduled an inquiry call and I was like, let's just get the information. I'll kind of put it out there that, hey, I'm interested in starting in like 5 or 6 months. And so I thought I was going down that path. And then one day I was actually standing in the kitchen doing dishes and my cell phone rings with a Savannah number and it was you. And I was not who I was expecting to work with. And you were like, I want to do this and I want to start now. And I remember being really flattered. And I remember getting off the call and thinking, okay, well, this is not my plan. And kind of praying through that and trying to decide, okay, is this a right risk to take, Lord? And felt a lot of peace and felt a lot of alignment that, like, okay, let's do this. Let's run with the opportunity that's in front of me. And so kind of blew my spreadsheets out the window and we started and I wouldn't look back. It's been by far the most faith building thing for me in the last 6 months to push myself. And I think you're really uniquely equipped to do that. But to push myself through this process and to really grow Sycamore in a way that I know would have never happened if I was doing it alone.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying all those things.
Yeah.
When I think of wise practice, I think of it as it's a business thing, but it's a spiritual thing, right? It's like, yeah, I'm your business coach, but I also am here with you saying, where's God in this? Like, and I'm praying with you and I'm discerning with you. And like, we're finding God in the process. And I love that part, but it's like you took the risk. You threw
I
out the
did.
spreadsheets and listened to what you felt like God was leading you into. And it's through that. I mean, at the time you were saying, I think if I remember correctly, when we first started, you were like, I really want to improve my solo practice and get it functioning better before I think about a group. And then we went through all the things, and it was very clear that you were ready to start a group. So you started down a path you didn't anticipate. And you know, I was also thinking about this idea. We're talking about practices changing us, things that don't work out. Like I mean, I can tell you so many stories where I was like, God's told me this, not audibly, but I like really sense it. And then it didn't work out, or the very direction I was going to go in, or this seems like God moving, and then it doesn't work out. And just the way that God uses that. And, obviously you share however much you want to, but I know you had a situation recently that you wanted to work a certain way, and then you get a phone call that it's totally not that way. And like, how does that change you and mold you?
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think we learned so much through disappointments, and I did. I had a really probably my biggest disappointment so far with Sycamore in hiring a couple of weeks ago, and I was actually really surprised by my reaction. Um, in the moment, of course, I was devastated by what happened, and it was not consistent with all the plans and dreams that I had made.
Mhm.
And I was surprised by how quickly I turned a corner to say, hey, you know what? That's all right. The Lord's not surprised by this. This doesn't surprise him. And I can be okay in this. I can be disappointed that this particular thing didn't work out, but I can turn the corner. And so it was almost automatic, which is not normal for me. Normally I can feel my feels and really get into the disappointment. But I think because I have kind of found my way into a pretty surrendered, trusting place with Sycamore, when my plan A did not happen, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll find out what plan B is.
Love it.
So yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to you, and I think back on so many disappointments where it built that resiliency.
Hmm.
And now when something doesn't work out, I mean, I still get upset, but then I try to go back and go, okay, this has happened this many times. Why do I worry? Like, God is always God. And even this morning, just driving to work, and I was discouraged about some things not working out, and a song came on the radio and just reminded me that, like, even when things don't look right, God has got my heart in his hands.
Yeah.
And he knows my needs in the future so much better than I do.
Hmm.
And it's as soon as we think, "Oh, I've got this, I'm fine," God reminds us that, you really don't. And it's like
Yeah.
going back to that childlike state of, "Okay, I just have to trust you." And I'm always like, "Why am I back here?" But that's me taking the reins myself and trying to do things.
Yeah. I like that picture. It's kind of a childlike state of just trusting that good things are coming and good things will work out.
Mhm. Yeah, so do you have any, like, things you go back to when you're feeling really discouraged or not sure where God is moving that you kinda go back to help?
Yeah, I think that I do have several. It depends on the season. I really am pretty big on like integrating my relationship with the Lord and my experiences with him into my day. And so I have several like daily routines that I do that help me stay connected. I have like a prayer that I say at the end of every day when I walk out of my practice doors. And I just remind myself, hey, I'm leaving these clients in your care, Lord, and I am not going to take them home with me. Like, I'm not taking them on the drive home. I'm not taking them into my life and in my heart outside of that office because that's not what I've been asked to do. And so that is something that I do on the client side of things. But when it comes to the more business side of things, which I do find that those thoughts linger a lot longer, the risk and just the joy and the challenge of being the business owner side of things, I do a lot of deep breathing and a lot of physically leaning back in my chair. And I have kind of developed that almost like a little ritual of sorts to remind myself, like, hey, I am not in control and that my feet are still on the floor. I'm still breathing. Like, there is still more work to do, but I'm not in charge of this. And so that's been an important thing for me. I think this is super important. I have people around me that just tell me how it is, that
Uh-huh.
just tell me like, hey, Shelby Ray, it's not that big of a deal. Or, you've survived 100% of the bad days that you've had, and they don't kind of echo chamber that disappointment. And that helps me kind of cultivate that resiliency too.
Mhm. I love that you have the little things that you're doing, like the rituals, and it's through those rituals over and over again that are changing us, right?
Mm,
Right. I love to light a candle. And
yeah.
it's not the best in a building, but we're into candles here at Water's Edge. And so for me, it's pulling out the lighter and intentionally lighting it and reminding me that the Holy Spirit exists in this room,
Hmm.
whatever it is that I'm doing, and then blowing it out at the end of the day to say, this is complete, and I will
Mm,
walk out. And
I love
just
that.
similar to kind of what you're sharing, those rituals do go far.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've had the honor of working with you. It's been such a pleasure. And just the joy of seeing God working in you and in me. I mean, it reminds me of, as therapists, our clients change us,
Yeah.
you know, and even as a business consultant, like, the people I get to work with change me and create amazing relationships in my life. So I'm honored to have that with you. And I really enjoyed this conversation and the way that we could talk about how God's moving in us. And this will be a continued conversation because he will continue to do that work in us. Is there anything else that we did not touch on that you wanted to make sure to mention today?
No, I think we covered the biggest parts of this last year of my life. I think if I would to just sum it up, it's what I said at the beginning, right? This Our practices are building us, and there is just such an invitation to participate with God in that process. And I would say to listeners out there to lean into that space and to pay attention to what the Holy Spirit is doing in us, in you, as we build our practices.
Mhm. I love that. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. It's been a treat, and look forward to sharing this episode.
Yeah, thanks, Whitney.